Okay, I am here at the Camp Letterman site, also known as the George Wolf Farm, and this is going to be part 9 in our video series. And we are in the southeastern corner of what was Camp Letterman. And we're going to talk about a couple areas here today. The first one would be right where my camera is facing, and that is where the U.S. Christian Commission was encamped. Now, the U.S. Christian Commission was there for the spiritual welfare of the soldiers. And they were camped right here in this area, and their job basically was to overlook the spiritual welfare of the soldiers, meet the needs of their particular faith, whether that be Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, or so on. They would hand out tracts, they would have mass, they would have Bible study, they would have different spiritual activities to aid the soldier along in his physical rehabilitation as well. So they were placed here in the camp. Looking over into this area, first I want to point out that that tree is a witness tree. That's a Camp Letterman witness tree. It's about 170 years old. It's one of only a few left here at the old Camp Letterman site. And right there in front of that tree, in this area, which was wooded at the time, was where the U.S. Sanitary Commission was camped. And you can see both U.S. Sanitary Commission and U.S. Christian Commission tents in the photos of Camp Letterman if you look them up online. Now, the U.S. Sanitary Commission was a modern-day Red Cross. They overlooked the sanitary conditions of the camp and seen that everything that was being done by the medical personnel, the surgeons and their assistants, was being done in a sanitary manner. Now, they were encamped in this area. Just in front of us, in the distance, you can see the Hals's Steakhouse, and then just beyond the row of trees here would be today's Gettysburg Walmart area. That was where the camp support staff was housed. Now, all this area here was under the shade of trees back in 1863 here on the George Wolf Farm. And in recent years, just maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was a tree clearing here just after they got rid of the mobile home park. There used to be a mobile home park here on this field, which is Camp Letterman. As I stated in a few other videos, this in 1863 was the George Wolf Farm, and I'm sure you can hear the wind blowing here today. This was one of the reasons that this site was chosen, because it sat up high on a hill. It had excellent airflow. It had excellent drainage for the water. It sat very high, as it's hard to see on a sunny day like this, but in the distance here, just beyond this water tower, you can actually see the water tower on East Cemetery Hill here in the distance, and the cemetery gatehouse. Over here to the right of this little structure here, just in the distance over here, you can actually see Oak Ridge, where the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. And then just in the distance over here in this ridge line, you can actually see the Lutheran Seminary. And the photograph that I had posted yesterday on the Gettysburg Facebook was a photograph taken from Seminary Ridge looking in this direction. If you look up on the top left-hand corner, you can actually see the tents of Camp Letterman, which would have been just in front of us about 200 yards. So to recap, the section over here by the Halses was this camp support. Back here in the southeastern corner was the U.S. Sanitary Commission, and then over here was the U.S. Christian Commission. These were all their campsites here at Camp Letterman. In our next video series, we're gonna take a look at the embalming tent, the dead house, and the cemetery, which were just on the other side of this fence in the grove of trees that's out there today, as well as an archaeological dig that was done about 15 years ago where they were looking for different artifacts. I'm just waiting to receive permission from the property owner to go over there, but that'll be on our next series of videos here on Camp Letterman. This has been Camp Letterman Part 9 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Standing here, we're going to continue our series on Camp Letterman here. On our last part, we left you with the U.S. Sanitary Commission and the U.S. Christian Commission, which were just in this direction today. Today's video is going to be on the embalming tent and the graveyard at Camp Letterman. I am standing in now this little cleared out area where the graveyard once stood. To my right would be the U.S. Sanitary Commission and going out toward Route 30 where the camp was. To my left in this direction would be Route 116 and the Daniel Lady Farm here in the distance. The embalming tent where the bodies were brought after they died sat right over here where this little tree is at. And in this area right here where I'm standing, where it's cleared out, this would have been the cemetery. Now here at Camp Letterman, there were 301 men who were buried in the cemetery, both Union and Confederate, both enlisted men and officers, and one black Confederate teamster that was buried in the cemetery here where I'm standing. Now the reason that this is clear here, and it seems like everything else is overgrown, about 20 years ago they did an archaeological study of the ground here to see if they could find anything, and they dug down about 1.5 feet, and if you look over here you can see the rise in the ground where they had actually dug down. And they dug down in two spots. They dug down here and then just about 15 yards toward the actual campsite itself just before the fence. Now of course all the bodies that were buried here in the Camp Letterman Cemetery were disinterred. Northern troops being buried in the National Cemetery or in their hometowns. Confederate troops as well taken to their hometown. So there were no bodies left here on the field, though there may have been a bone chip or some type of remains of a grave that wasn't completely cleaned out. The site of Camp Letterman, where we stand, if you to both our left and our right, it goes downhill. We're actually on the highest ground in the area here, and that was specifically done because both bad water drainage from the cemetery, with all the bad water from the bodies that were rotting in the ground, would have drained toward the Daniel Lady Farm property downhill into a ditch. Also the wind, this is a very windy farm, as you can imagine, in 1863, and you can even hear the wind in some of our older videos. Most of the wind goes toward the south, toward 116 in the Daniel Lady Farm. So any foul odors associated with corpses in the ground would have. Letterman Part 11, the site of the former George Wolfe farmhouse and barn. And we're standing here in a woods today. I'm going to turn around, and directly in front of us is Route 30. This is the old Ren Kirby building over here, and to our right there are a couple hotels and a Dairy Queen, and this little rise in the ground that sits over here in the woods is the old foundation for the old George Wolfe house, and then over in the distance over there is the old barn foundation. There once was, right about where Ren Kirby building is, there was a road, a driveway that came out here and then curved around toward the camera. That was the farm, the location that marked the spots of the house, the outbuildings, and the barn. Now, and as I walk out to the road here from the woods, Over the last 10 videos that we shot on Camp Letterman, we focused mainly in the area of where Camp Letterman's hospital was. Camp Letterman's hospital was, of course, on the George Wolfe farm, and George Wolfe owned well over 275 acres here in Gettysburg. Now, the farm that the hospital was located was on the eastern part of George Wolfe's farm, which is in the distance that way. Today, because of development and progress, most of the George Wolfe farm is gone. There are several hotels, there's a U-Haul, there's a Dairy Queen ice cream, a Perkins, different restaurants, shops, a healthcare center, I believe called Transitions Healthcare, a Econo Lodge, and as we walk out here, and there used to be a miniature golf place that sits right here that's now been abandoned. It's up for sale. Days Inn, Super 8, everything from where the house used to sit eastward, going in that direction, was all part of the George Wolfe farm, and extended beyond this hotel over to where the giant shopping center sits today. And that's where we shot the first 10 videos, over at the at the giant shopping center. So you'll want to go back and watch those 10 parts on Camp Letterman. The location that we're filming in today marks the spot again where the house, the outbuildings, and the barn once stood, and that is right here on Route 30, just next to what used to be the old Ren Kirby building. At one time, a driveway came in this direction right here, back into where the wooded area now, and the house sat over here, and the barn and different outbuildings sat just to its right, and the driveway curved to the left over to the house. Of course, the house and barn are no longer there. And to get a reference point, this water tower is the water tower we've seen on some of our earlier parts of Camp Letterman. Sits over at the giant shopping center. So you can see that the farmhouse and building sat here, and the property extended all the way here and beyond this tower into the giant shopping center. So it was a huge farm that George Wolfe owned, where the largest field hospital here at Gettysburg once sat on his property. This has been Camp Letterman, Part 11, and Secrets of the Battlefield, the location of the old George Wolfe farm and what's left today, the remnants of the foundation, here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. In Part 12, and we're standing here at the Hilton Garden Inn, here along the York Pike, which is over here in the distance. And today we're going to look at the monument that's been placed out just to the right side of the entrance of the Hilton under the flagpole. And as we've toured all through the Camp Letterman site in the past 11 videos, we have taken you over to the site where the spring house, the cookhouse was over here in the distance, where the United States Christian Commission and the Sanitary Commission. Behind the Hilton has been where the field tents were set up. Of course, over here was the trash pits that we looked at. And back behind the giant shopping center over here, where the water tower is that you can see in the distance, of course, was Hospital Hill. And then beyond, along the giant shopping center, behind the Papa John's operating tent, and in the distance, far in the distance, was the cemetery. And then, of course, the George Wolfe farm, which we shot on our last video, was back beyond over here, the actual farm buildings and house. This was all farmland, and this was the hospital site. And on July 5th, 2013, this monument that sits here under the flagpole was dedicated. And we're going to read it in a minute, but it basically says that the field hospital that was here was the largest on the western hemisphere of the earth. It was named after medical doctor and Major Jonathan Letterman, and that the hospital sat here from July 22nd, 1863 till November the 20th, 1863. And as we went through a lot of our videos on farms and field hospitals and different barns, you have to remember that all the patients from those barns that we've looked at ended up coming here, or most of them ended up coming here a few weeks after the battle, and this is where they were cared for until either their death or their transfer to a military prison or their transfer home. And again, on July 5th, this monument was dedicated of 2014 for the 150th anniversary. And it reads, Camp Letterman on the site from July 22nd to November 20th, 1863, was constructed the largest field hospital in the Western Hemisphere. Named after Major Jonathan Letterman, MD, USMS, of the Army of the Potomac, caring for 21,000 Union and Confederate casualties. Erected to mark the 150th anniversary, July 5th, 2013, by the Confederation of Union Generals, Patrick Fairburn President, Dr. Randall Craker Monument Chair, Lee Hartford Preservation Chair, John M. Hart Jr. Vice President Chair. And again, not only is this a very important site that's been partially developed by a shopping center here, but it is the site of the largest hospital ever erected on the Western Hemisphere of the Earth. And in our last 11 videos, we've taken you around the site of the old George Wolfe Farm. And again, today we're here at the Hilton Garden Inn, right under the flagpoles of the front entrance to the monument that was dedicated July 5th, 2013, on the 150th anniversary of the Camp Letterman site. This has been Camp Letterman, Part 12 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.